So, good morning, dear participants of the forum, both online and offline. My name is Anna Medvedeva. I'm a partnership technical lead of People in Need Ukraine. And I'm honored today to co-moderate this panel on localization in Ukraine together with Yana Zhovnirenko, partnership coordinator of ACTED. Before I give the floor to Yana to introduce our speakers, I would like to briefly set the scene for the conversation. According to the Humanitarian Outcomes Study, as of 2020, and I don't believe the numbers have considerably changed, the UN agencies and NGOs in Ukraine received more than 90% of the Ukraine humanitarian funding, while Ukrainian organizations and volunteers were able to get less than 1%. Meanwhile, these are normally and quite often local volunteers, grassroots initiatives, civil society organizations that are the first responders managing to deliver assistance across a large country, in particular to hard-to-reach areas and insecure locations. So both Ukrainian organizations and NGOs in Ukraine widely advocate for the necessity to adopt the approaches that would advance localization in Ukraine. Such debates evolve around different topics, and to name just a few, like the simplification of due diligence, passportization of the partners assessment, duty of care, support of volunteers, and fair cost share. This conversation proceeds mostly in Ukraine, and since this topic goes so far beyond the humanitarian framework in Ukraine, today's event in Brussels presents a valuable opportunity for us to tackle the issue of localization at the European, at the global levels. And I will stop here to give the floor to Yana to introduce our speakers and get back to you in a while with questions addressed to the speakers. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear audiences, dear panelists. Let me introduce our panelists. Unfortunately, I don't see people online that will be connected. Yeah, hello.
Hello.
So I will start from the right. Her Excellency Mrs. Nicole Ruder, Assistant Director General, Ambassador of SDC. Then Yaroslav Minkin, the founder of the local youth organization STAN. Then Yevgen Kolyada, the head of Kharkiv Regional Coordination Center. Dmitro Roy, the head of local NGO Southern Development Strategy. And our respected online panelist, Sasha Galkin, the head of one of the largest national NGO in Ukraine, Right to Protect. And Artyom Sabayev, the head of local charitable fund New Way. Unfortunately, we see only Sasha. Hope Artyom will be connected.
Here.
Yes. Good morning, Artyom. Nice to see you. So I give the floor to Anya and our panelists with the questions, and then we will continue.
Thanks. So I would like to start by addressing the question to right to protection in the first line. However, other participants, please feel free to jump in, and we would like to get your perspective on this issue as well. So as already mentioned, the context in Ukraine presents a unique opportunity to advance localization and possibly challenge the largest system of humanitarian funding at the global level. Right to protection is a successful example of localization in Ukraine. You transitioned from an NGO to national organization with local top management and experts. With this background and your track record with different humanitarian development actors in Ukraine, do you see any specific ways how to achieve this goal of transforming the global funding system of humanitarian response? And for other local organizations and speakers present here, what would be your perspective? Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. They went online, so it took some time to appear. But finally we are with Artyom online here. And just a couple of words about right to protection in the way, in terms of localization. So we actually started localization well before actually this term became known. So, and it was actually in 2013. And at that time, it was an American faith-based NGO operating in Ukraine. So, and a couple of years it took us to actually to discuss how it's better to have this localization shaped, and actually it took another 2-3 years to become a fully independent national charity fund. So now sometimes some donors and some researchers debate about actually the necessity of international NGOs to let's say localize to get registered local entities and then to become so-called national NGOs or local NGOs. So we as we started well before that, so and it took us like way longer to become a national NGO. So, and I believe that it's not our case, but so and we were kind of a pioneer in this in Ukraine at that time. So we did not have a good example to follow. So that was a lot of mistakes we made during this period of time, so I believe that it might have been even way faster, but still we struggle with some let's say localization issues being a national NGO. But there is a very good point for being kind of localized NGO, because we know two worlds actually: the world of the international NGOs and the world of national NGOs, and that's kind of we try to actually to allocate to take best things from these both worlds. So, but I believe that localization, it doesn't mean that every and each organization needs to be, let's say, to become an R2P or whatever. So, because I believe that it's vital in Ukraine to keep this variety of civil society organizations. Start like from volunteer groups and to well-established long-term NGOs. So that's why I believe that localization approaches might be very much different, and they need to be really tested, and they need to be, let's say, to have enough time to really just to see how it works. In our case, so again, so it took quite a lot of time. So, if please, would you repeat the last question about funding, because I actually missed it because of connection.
I think you have addressed the major question already, and we can give the space for other speakers.
Please.
Anyone who wants to compliment?
Hi everyone, my name is Dima and my NGO was established only 2 years ago. We just have a birthday in December, and we are really example of localization, as well as how we established and became bigger and bigger, and from other side how other international NGO invest their time, their resources in us to be developed. Firstly was economic development organization and infrastructure development. But the war began and everybody should be teach and study how to react on this. And on the second day of the war, our NGO established the biggest humanitarian aid initiative in occupied Kherson. Kherson was occupied on the first day, absolutely, tanks was on the central square. And full our team for 2 months in occupation, then relocated, established with big, as well as in food and also in pharma. Support of people who will be die without some healthcare, specific healthcare, like diabetic or others. And by the way, I should say that localization support as well as from international NGOs, and here we are very thankful to acted from our side also to correspond the foundation of Sean Penn, to some Denmark organization, because they believe in such little flowers which could be grown. And also we are supported from the President's office, because several months ago, the head of this humanitarian initiative from our NGO, she received the President's Medal from President Zelensky. And I should say that Ukrainian case, it's all about localization. And all participants who was yesterday on the main panel, you see that national government with strong capacity, local NGOs with strong capacity, and they became stronger and stronger during this war. For example, right now we operate in more than 8 regions. Our local or national, it's sometimes hard to say about it. But also localization, it's not about a civil society organization. It's not only about international organization. It's also about collaboration with municipality and with local business. And I will give you a little example how, for example, we have already restored a gas supply to suburban of Mykolaiv city, which was the line of the battlefield between Russians and Ukraine. Originally, gas supply was not a priority of international donors, but towards with local business, with very small village municipalities, and support of, by the way, big major city hall of the Mykolaiv city, we realized this project. By the way, it was very cheap, very fast, and it's provide a heat for people. And you understand, Ukrainian winters, they are very cold. So even more colder than European. And in fast reaction, we provide people possibility to boil the water, so to have a hygiene, yes, to be in heat, in warm. Thank you very much.
So you wanted to say that collaboration of several parts, including NGO, international donors, national one, authorities and businesses are, how to say, very profitable for any localization activities in Ukraine?
We do not need to engage all stakeholders, but every organization should find this triangle, some engagement here, which are useful for them and first of all productive in such fast, rapid environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody else want to compliment Artyom? Wanted to?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I want to add some sentence about this, that I think that really strong relationships with local communities and NGOs is very, very important for us, and investing in local capacity building, collaboration closely with other local organizations and stakeholders are very important for us. And by doing so, we can ensure the humanitarian efforts are more effective and responsive to the needs of the communities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sasha, Dmitro, and Artyom. Indeed, as Sasha has mentioned, sometimes we can start localization without even knowing that it is called localization. And yesterday there were different discussions around the word itself and the need to decolonize it. And you have mentioned that there are different actors involved in the localization as a process. But now my question would be specifically on donors and their approaches, and it is open to all speakers. Do you see any changes in approaches or simplification in procedures for local CSOs introduced by donors or NGOs in the past year due to the scale of the humanitarian emergency? And what additional suggestions do you have to, for improving this further? Thanks. Who'd like to start?
given that this is addressed to donors, I feel a certain responsibility to say something. But maybe let me take a very quick step back. I think you said something at the beginning that is very true. The discussion around locally led aid and support and assistance in Ukraine is actually going beyond Ukraine, and it's also going beyond humanitarian aid. And I think you're doing a huge service in many ways to this international conversation that we have to have. So for Switzerland, and this is the example that I can talk about, I was in charge of the Ukraine program until last summer. We had already engaged in supporting Ukraine on its path to decentralization, on its path to locally led governance. So it is also kind of a natural fit that localization would then fit into that. But I think most importantly, when the war broke out, we got from our long-term partners lots of requests for flexible funding, for reprogramming, for can we use this money to immediately get, sleeping bag, blankets, food, whatever it took. And I think because we were there at the time, we were so much under shock ourselves. And as head of cooperation, Aisha said yes, 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 yes. And we freed up literally with zero bureaucracy. It took an email and an okay going back. We freed up to 25% of the budgets of our local partners. And instead of this becoming a big mess, it actually worked out quite well. And I think this is what then enabled us to engage more with local partners, because even our headquarters understood this seems to work. And this trust that you can build when you already know your partners. And I think this was for us, the secret was these were established relationships that then shifted into another area of activity, which allowed us to understand that this worked. And this, again, allowed us to push the envelope quite a bit. So what we then did, and which seems to have been getting some traction, I'm no longer as closely involved with Ukraine as I was before, but is we established together with our local partners the principles of fair partnerships. And they came out of two things, I think. They're inspired by two things. We have the Lugano principles for the recovery of Ukraine on one side, these 7 principles that were agreed in Lugano last July. But then we also have, out of the Grand Bargain, the caucus on how to work with intermediaries that has come up with a number of suggestions as well. So we ended up with 8 principles of fair partnerships, and they're Ukrainian. They were developed with our Ukrainian partners, and they are of interest, not just to Switzerland, but to a whole bunch of other donors as well. And they include things like duty of care. They include things like full cost recovery, capacity building, simplified procedure. Now, let's also have no illusions. There is limits to simplified procedures if I am spending Swiss taxpayers' money. And my own filter, and then I will stop, is always the same. My mother pays taxes in Switzerland. Am I comfortable if I say yes to this project and it is paid for with my mother's money? And if I can say yes, then I can simplify procedures. If I say, then I need procedures. So I think this is a reality check that we have to have as donors. We spend taxpayers' money. We spend my mother's money. And with almost everything we did in Ukraine, I was very happy to spend my mother's money.
Okay, thank you. I see it's interesting to hear from the ground their opinion about the simplification of the process.
So again, it's not solo really. I'm very thank you that you mentioned about transparency, how foreign taxes are really used in international aid. And we local organization in Ukraine, and I hope everywhere in the world, should understand and should be realistic. Bureaucratic never be less, it will be more. And it's first of all connected with transparency, how we use public money of European Union, US, doesn't matter what country. But here could be, we should not sometimes exclude some procedures. We could simply simplify it or unify it. And as mentioned Anna, about passport due diligence or assessment passport for NGO. For example, my organization, where from 5 to 50 people, in reality, we fill this assessment almost every week, or for sure every month. And all assessments are the same in reality, but questions in other orders, sentences sometimes change, but in reality it is the same. And I hope and I propose, as I could for the donor side, that donors could coordinate here, because there are several big, really big, like oligopolies of donors like OCHA, UN system, US system, European Union system, Switzerland, which play in dual game, yes, yes. But, and where we could, I ask you, yes, if it's possible, yes, to push the process to make like an annual passport, which should be every year updated. But when some organization, like new partners for ACTED, new partners for Sweet cooperation, yes, international cooperation, where we could simply send this assessment with the same answers in reality, yes, and it will really give us more time, really more time, to do aid for everybody, to help to develop all important things we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, completely agree that the actually due diligence process, it's, I guess, I don't know, complicated for both you and for us, and we try to work on this. I hope we will get more simplified procedures soon. I guess
can I just briefly comment on this? Because we are the organization in Ukraine, one of the few NGOs that do have such passports of assessment. And it's basically an easy thing to produce such documents, just several minutes to make a PDF and sign it. But the other point is that do we have anyone in Ukraine among NGOs and donors to accept and recognize the results of our assessment? No one. So we advocate for recognition of our assessment before other donors, and that's absolutely another discussion, but so I would just like to mention that there is another side of this problem. Thanks.
Yeah, I understand, yes.
I'm sorry, can you see my hand, or it's erased, or it's not seen on the screen?
No, we don't, sorry. Yes, now we see.
Okay,
Sasha,
it's my hand.
Over to you.
Can I? Okay, thank you so much. Just wanted to put on the table a couple of points. The donor community is kind of a driver of localization to some extent, because those enablers who actually are among the UN and NGO community, they also very much, let's say, listen to the donors' opinions, and that's why it's very much important to get donors' community engaged as much as possible to localization process. So, to my best knowledge, a couple of biggest donors like BHA, ECHA, they have started already with some, let's say, substantial changes in their structure in order to meet new global localization agenda. So, for example, BHA has developed a policy paper on localization, on humanitarian localization, and it's beautiful, it's very good. And actually it implies that the donor per se needs to change very much its approach, to change its structure, and in order to be able to meet this variety of different localization, let's say, requests. And they, as far as I know, they're going to test it in a couple of countries. I hope Ukraine will be one of them. So, but like going to the reality, we've been working very successfully, and I'm very grateful for the Swiss government to provide us with funding. What we have found a little bit, let's say, difficult, that, for instance, still there is a co-funding. And this is not like only the Swiss issue. Swiss government issues we face, and this is many donors who really require co-funding from national and local NGOs. And on the other hand, we don't have on many occasions, like R2P has been dealing with that for quite a long of time. So we've been able somehow to advocate for that. It's overheads. It's indirect costs. They, on many occasions, are not included in the budget. So that's why I believe that's it's very much important also to take into account working with local NGOs. So co-funding and overheads also something which is also important to local NGOs and nationals, but not only for international ones. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I saw that Yaroslav was holding microphone, but politely gave the floor to Sasha.
Yeah, I try to. Okay, for me, this is quite big question. Who is our partners on the grassroots level? And this is probably a question to all of you, because you probably, mostly all of your organizations are working in Ukraine. Together with People in Need and other international organizations, we are working on a grassroots level, on a village level, and on a small scale level. And there are, from my point of view, 3 different types of organizations or initiatives, groups that we're trying to cooperate with. One are mission-driven people. Second are bottom-up approach. And third one are structured bureaucrats. And there are really, for me, it's a challenge with whom we need to work. I will start from the third one. They are very good in reporting us, but very bad in doing things. Like, they can say that they covered 1 million people in their village, which is 100 people. And they can prove us with papers. Another one, like bottom up, they are very good and they are very active and they want to do something from their community. But usually they are very affected, for example, by xenophobia. They really don't understand why Roma people need to receive humanitarian aid. They are Roma. Or why we need to support LGBT plus community. We need to only support women and with children and only white and heterosexual and Christian, etc. And this is like, it will take years to explain those who are really bottom-up approach. They want to be very good. They are very good in going to church or, I don't know, to be there, like with their family members. But they don't understand that humanitarian aid is neutral for everyone, yeah, and this without discrimination. And the third one, who are like, usually this is teams who are very valued, like oriented to European values. They usually less structured than those who are working for a long time with humanitarian money. And probably my suggestion is to pay more attention to this core funding and to help those who are already mission-driven to become more effective in a way of papers, and also to become more effective to do more from bottom to up, for example, using different research methodologies, using mapping methodologies, asking people on the ground about their needs. And after that, we can talk one more time about, okay, can we do this localization, and can we trust our money or your mother's money to one of 3 types of organizations? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answers. I want to come to the very interesting point, very interesting question that was raised or partially mentioned by Artem earlier about capacity building. I know this is very sensitive questions, and several times it mentioned, even had been mentioned yesterday by some other panelists. Well, now you see that a lot of international donors offer great variety of such events aiming to improve capacity of local responders. There are many trainings, many workshops, sessions, online, offline courses, etc. on the different topics, starting from project management, and ending with accountability to affected population, selection of beneficiaries, first aid, safety and security, etc., and so on and so forth. So great variety. I want to hear your opinion from the ground. How do you think, if such trainings and such events is needed, if yes, in which scale, to which extent, which topics, to whom this kind of buildings should be addressed, if not, also why?
I can answer. It's better to stand up. Hard to sit. Morning, everyone. So, frankly speaking about capacity buildings, you know, the volunteers need the three main things to solve any problem, any question. Three main things. First is desire, second is human resources, and the third is knowledge. It's a simple one. In Kharkiv region, I'm representative of Kharkiv region now. We have a unique situation there, believe me. We have a huge amount of local NGOs. We have extremely activity of public society there. And we want to save them. We want to provide them a help to work further and to help people more and more. 2022 is over for Ukraine. I call it like a year of phone calls. We always called to someone, ask for resources, because we had no time to write the projects, to fill up the documents, and etc. It was a phone call year. It's end. 2023 is year of projects. So if we want to save the local NGOs, we need to teach them. So in Kharkiv, we provide and create the Public Society Development Center. This is an offline and online platform, a big training center for volunteers, local NGOs, and not only for volunteers, it's also for active IDPs and for all people of the region. We need to teach them how to do it, and it's really very effective now. It's working every day. They have trainings for internal, external reporting, for tactical medicine, for mining safety, for English and Ukrainian language lessons, and etc., etc. So my opinion is to teach the volunteers and to give them an opportunity to be taught. And after that, you will see that the amount of grants will rise up, and the amount of quality fill-up grants will rise up also. Thank you.
So you wanted to say that this kind of trainings more applicable and useful for, how we call it, younger civil societies, NGOs, volunteers group, right?
Yeah, so I'm a simple volunteer, really. I was an actor before. I played in theater before the 24th of February. And I didn't know how to do it, and I still have no such a big experience like the guys have here in front of me, and you also. And actually, for me, it's very important that I want to help my people, Ukrainians, and I want to help it rightly. And of course, I'm a young organization, and it's very useful for me to know how it can be in a right way. And it's not so hard to teach, because you, like international NGOs, I came here from the Kharkiv region in a long way to send you a global message. Just still supporting and helping the local NGOs, the new ones. Teach them, send them your experts to teach, to explain. I had an experience already with the 2 donors, and really they teach us, they helped us. And it was a big experience for me, because we have a desire to help. This is a very simple way. Thank you.
Thank you, Evgeny. What can other, how we call it, all the organization can say about the capacity building? Probably Sasha, Artyom, Yaroslav.
Can I add? Yeah, something. I think that capacity building should be focused on building a long-term capacity rather than providing short-term fixes or solutions. And I want to add that project management, some teaching is very important. But I want to say that maybe you know in project management and in projects we have such part as in-kind money, and all local NGOs and national NGOs really need this part in projects, but not all projects have this part, and that's why I think that in-kind money is very important for us, really.
Okay, thank you. Dima,
I would add that actually it's very much important really just to have a tailor-made solution, because usually we've been actually snowed with different actors who are willing to provide absolutely different trainings. But that's very much difficult to navigate in this ocean of these, let's say, suggestions. And of course, I believe that it needs to be done in this particular context and with very particular understanding of what's going on. And just it's in terms of long term, in short term, there is kind of an it comes particularly to local NGOs and volunteer groups close to the front line. So, and specifically with those who have been partnering with international NGOs and the UN, there is just a huge need now, really, just to train them and actually to provide additional assistance, material assistance, to augment and to enhance their safety and security part. Because there is kind of a risk transfer now from the NGO community and the UN community to so-called last mile help providers. And of course, they do what they do, and they will do without having them. Do they have help or not? But since some partners do support them and do provide some funding, it's very much important to pay a lot of attention on their safety and security part. So to ensure that these, let's say, these most agile and the most active and effective NGOs are protective to the most possible way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. Yes, Nicole.
Thank you very much. Just to come in on this capacity building topic, I think we also need to, and my other colleague panelists have just done that, we need to unpack the expression a little bit, because there is all kinds of capacity building and different people understand different things when they talk about capacity building. And I think there is the big question of who pays for the capacity building that an organization needs to do itself. How do we calculate overheads? How do we calculate overheads beyond just a local NGO being able to provide a service and that's it? But how can the overhead be structured in a way and covered that the organization can grow commensurate with all the activities it is doing? At the same time, there is, for some donors, limitations on what we can do, but there's also a way of repackaging or rewriting budgets. For us, when it comes to local NGOs, and somebody was mentioning also frontline NGOs, it's a question of duty of care. And duty of care comes with a price. And that price is first aid training, it is safety and security training, it is equipment that we may not be able to provide, but that the NGOs themselves have to provide for the people that they send out to deliver humanitarian aid. So sometimes this is not capacity building, sometimes this is duty of care, sometimes it's organizational development, sometimes it is something else. We need a bit of creativity, But I think it boils down to being very specific. What do we mean by capacity building? And suddenly a funding opportunity might open up.
Yeah, thank you. Totally agree that we have to be very specific and selective with provision. The capacity building, so for us, it's like umbrella term. Under this term, we perceive all the, resources sharing event. Yeah, thank you.
Sasha says that I think it should be more capacity building provided by national organizations, right? I absolutely agree with this statement. I just wanted to make linkages with the topic I think we will cover as the last today, and I hope that we will have some time for a couple of questions. So capacity building is really related to such a topic as humanitarian standards and ethics of work in the humanitarian sphere. We all know that many Ukrainian organizations became humanitarians overnight, and they do not necessarily have specific knowledge of how to work in the humanitarian sphere. And this can be considered as part of our obligations as NGOs to provide such trainings. And I would like to ask our participants, you know that humanitarian organizations normally encourage their partners to stick to neutrality principle. And we know how difficult it is in Ukraine, because you can be a volunteer, you can be part of humanitarian action, but you also can be part of territorial defense and also part of armed forces. What is your position on this question? And probably, Nicole, we will start with you.
Thank you very much for giving me the easy ones. No, look, you're absolutely right. You have identified a challenge where, when we talk about principled humanitarian aid, there has been a lot of discussions and difficult discussions making that principle understood and why it is important in a context like Ukraine, where, frankly speaking, for a lot of people, and understandably so, the situation is black and white. And look, we're defending, and therefore helping and defending, it merges into the same thing. And yet, we are very much aware that humanitarian principles have been challenged in many settings, but they're there for a reason. And there is kind of no way around them. And what we found is that when we do engage with our partners and when we explain things and when there is time to reflect, and I think this only started happening after the first few months of the war. To be honest, these conversations, don't try to have these conversations in March of 2022. But I think there is conversations going on today where also, because unfortunately this conflict is not going to be ended tomorrow, where this understanding is there, and somehow the sustainability of the acceptance and the access of humanitarian aid is linked to principled work. So, but again, it's not just something you impose, it's something you have to discuss and that you have to reflect on considerably. And if you do want to give the floor to somebody who's a real expert on that, he's sitting right there. Manuel Bester is the head of our humanitarian aid, and if you want to take an intervention from the floor, should you choose so, he is just sitting there.
Yeah, we started to support people from first days, and our organization is located in the western part of Ukraine, so we host very different people. And first what we saw that local government started to say, we are supporting only women with children. No men, no black people, no gay people for sure, etc. And lots of shelters and help points started to use this formula that's saying like, no, we're giving humanitarian aid only for women and with children. After that, we immediately asked our partners to share with us actual humanitarian principles. And even we were surprised how neutral they are. Yeah, and because you should help everyone with different passports, language, religious, etc. And that was really opposite in some communities in Western Ukraine. Also because of the regional specific of very right-wing parties that are coordinating this part of Ukraine. And it was a clash in between civil society organizations and local government. And I need to say that our team is still not trusting sometimes local governments because of this discriminative approach. Yeah, so that's all.
Thank you very much. I guess we are out of time. Probably we give the floor to our dearest audience. Maybe you have the questions. Yes, please help me with the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Volodymyr Kuska. I am a program officer with ECHO Kyiv, Ukraine. So I think that for this topic we need to have a separate conference maybe. It's because it's a very big one, not only for Ukraine but for other crises, and we see that in more complex environment the localization is becoming extremely important, because we need to expand, we need to ensure that we reach the most vulnerable, and in everywhere we can go. No, I just want to reflect on a couple of points. Of the first one, how local should be or must be localization, because I believe that a local civil society organization or volunteer group from Kharkiv, let's say, knows much better what is the situation and how to work in this particular region than, let's say, a civil society organization from Kirovogradska Oblast or from, I don't know, from Kyiv. So this is the first. The second point, you mentioned about these three main driven principles or issues for the volunteer groups, for INGOs. No, they need also funding. You know, this morning I received a call from the deputy mayor of Kherson, who is running this initiative, Ya Kherson, and he said, yeah, everyone is delivering aid to Mykolaiv, lives there, and we don't have resources to, you know, to bring this aid to Kherson. We need to pay volunteers. These are people that react during certain period of time on a voluntary basis, free of charge. But 1 year after, they need to feed their families, they need to feed themselves. So they need resources, running costs and other things. And the third point I would like to reflect on is what Sasha mentioned. It's about the request from the local implementing partners and INGOs to donors. I think that there is a certain way when not all requests are channeled enough. And I think that in particular the big national NGOs that have already the capacity, they should be maybe one of the driving forces for this localization. The localization maybe should be better promoted by the local partners, and then of course with the support of international partners and with the donors. Thank you.
I can answer. Yeah, it's better to stand up again. My English is better when I'm staying. So, thank you for your questions. Actually, I agree with you, especially with the second question, because of course I didn't say that local organizations are needed funded. This is the most important for us, but through the learning this all bureaucracy, tons of papers of international NGOs to fill up, we can expect some funding for locals, but of course we ask international one to be flexible to locals one, and try to when I meet with a lot of international organizations in our center, I ask them just to try to give small mini grants, small programs to support, to push, to do a first step, and it's working really. We analyze very good statistics when the international NGO gives even $1,000 to local one, and for them it's good money to provide a bit some small program for people, for IDPs or whatever. But yes, it's working and it's very effective. So don't afraid of local organizations. Trust them, give them opportunity. And this is the answer for the second question. For the first question, I would like to say that in every region in Ukraine, it's a three structure who is responsible for humanitarian aid wherever. It's locals, NGOs, international NGOs, and the local government. In Kharkiv region, we create the Relief Coordination Center. This is an aggregator, like information analytic platform for that three structures. And we connect, and of course, coordination is about flexibility, it's about compromises, because, listen, in Kharkiv we have 300 organizations, locals one, and they are different, they are very specific. And we need to be flexible to everyone, to speak with them if you want to unite them by information. And the results are very interesting. 25,000 of people were evacuated since September by volunteers, with supporting of international organizations by resources, and with information by government. For example, IDPs is supporting also 17 shelters we have in Kharkiv. They're supported by international, local NGOs and government, because we have general database and we unite them. So this is the answer for your question. If, for example, NGO from Kyiv or from Kirovograd or Kropivnitsky, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if we have such aggregators in each oblast. Who is representative of locals organizations from our side, like OCHA representative from international organizations. You can just come to us and ask, for example, in which way you work, what you want to provide, where you want to give a help, and we have the actual information in the humanitarian sphere, evacuation sphere, IDP sphere, pharmacy sphere, etc., 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 because closely connected with government, but independently from them, and closely connected to every society. So, thank you.
I should comment several. There are, in terms of collaboration, everybody is talking about the government. The government sums in everything. In reality, a lot of, especially international donors, by the way, try to collaborate, first of all, with the regional administration. But regional administration, they are appointed persons. And in Ukraine, I should say, they are changed every half a year. And sometimes OCHA, USAID, make a memorandum with governor who will pass away in 3-4 months, and the project does not start at all. And there is a lack of collaboration, first of all, with elected local government. And when we are talking, first of all, about government, we should understand that it's a local elected persons for 5 years, with whom donors really could make long-term collaboration, successful projects. I would simply to add, because we see that sometimes there are like
Okay, thank you very much for this fight. Yes, we have a few questions from the audience.
Yeah. Hi, this is Marek with People in Need. I would like to get back a little to the issue of the neutrality of the principle of humanitarian action, because I think in this particular issue we have something like a language barrier to the locally led response or to the localization. So we are definitely not questioning these value-based principles as humanity, as impartiality. But the neutrality, the concept which is perfectly valid and relevant for the donors, for the international organizations, can be seen and felt completely wrong and inappropriate for the communities which are under the assault, under the direct attack. And this is not about Ukraine only, this is about Myanmar, this is about Syria. It's just Ukraine brought that issue so strongly. So I think we really not only have to discuss it and contextualize it, but I think we have to look at the language we are using. And I really feel, following the Ukraine for many years, this could be one of those sort of maybe small points, but important points which are alienating the international concepts and the national concepts to an extent that are difficult to merge. So I would really like to hear what sort of practical step, how do you feel about this as the members of the national societies, whether you have with your donors, with your international partner, real discussions on this? Where are we drawing the red lines? Like in our organization, is definitely the red line is not the support to the military, which would bring us to our wrong side. But I think we had partners which had these sort of blended activities, doing evacuations, supporting civilians, but also supporting the military at least at the beginning. So where's the flexibility? And I think we are just rounding around this issue on various conferences. The first panel is always, which we had yesterday, always mentioned the issues, but never goes inside. So thanks for any reflections you might bring.
If I may sharpen this question even more so, and I appreciate very much the very frank statements that you made, can a local organization be principled? Can you be neutral, impartial, and independent? And this is, in a context like, a polarized context like the Ukraine, very much a question. It also in other contexts, it's not only Ukraine, in the Middle East we have this on a daily basis. But tell us, because I really appreciate how you mentioned these difficulties to explain these principles. But for a donor, this is a real issue.
I should say that in my team, it was the first principle when we was established. In my team, I have people who voted for all parties, So we have, in our team, we collaborate all our polarized Ukrainian society before the war, it's work inside our team. We, our second principal position, that our NGO does not work with army. We sometimes could collaborate in some delivering, especially on the 0 kilometer. Yes, but we do not provide them help, yes, like assist. We do not, for example, if we have some food kits, wash kits, we do not provide them from army. But there are our friends which are NGO, which have another position. They do not provide help for civilians and combatants, they provide help for militarians. I should say that in Ukraine you have full variety of organization, and using all these assessments in due diligence or your own research, you could find the exit local NGO which you would like, which under your some organizational ideology, yes, and humanitarian principle. You could work with us, for example, who are very strong with neutrality. Or, for example, with Evgeny, who works both with military, both with civilians, yeah? Or, for example, Stan, who works with minorities, yeah? It's, you could find every kind of organization. So, we really have only in Kharkiv more than 100 local organizations. You
300.
will find there somebody who you will like to work.
Can I 1 minute? To tell you the truth, sir, every day I waking up and I realize that I lose a lot my relatives, unfortunately. They were killed. I lose my friends, my classmates, and I lose my friends in the front border because they are now militaries, the Ukrainian forces, and they defend our freedom. So, yes, in the heart, I am not neutral. I want to defend my country. I want to defend my people. The kids are there. So, in that part, we help militaries, but with different charitable funds or different public organizations, which is working with militaries, and it's written in official documents of our organization. But another side, we have very clear organizations who is working certainly with civilians. It's only with them. We can divide organizations, and we can work clearly, and we can show you the clearness of our work. It's not a problem. And in Kharkiv region, more than 300 organizations, and I know every one of them. And I know who is clear, who is not clear. We are people, like, yes, we are different. It's true. But to tell you the truth, we can't be neutral. but it's very hard to explain to you. Yes, in my heart, I'm not neutral, but in a work, if you give a financial support for civilians, we will use it for civilians. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for your work. We are running out of time, unfortunately, but feel free to engage in conversations with our speakers bilaterally. Thanks to all present here, and I think that the discussion showed that there are a lot of good practices and different discussions that could proceed on different topics. On the other hand, there is still space for improvement on the side of donors, but also on the side of local communities. So thanks a lot. Jana, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, audience, and hope the topics that we raised today definitely worth to separate discussion and separate forum, especially last question about the neutrality and partiality. It's a long time discussion, capacity building and due diligence and other issues that we try to, reveal today. Plus, sometimes I heard that somebody called localization like Ukrainization. Probably it's a more proper term because we have specific context, and I guess we keep discussion on this bilaterally in mails, and hope kind of proper events will be organized specifically for this topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience. Thank you, our dearest panelists, for your response and for your questions and answers. And thank you very much.